Hello and welcome to The Working Songwriter, the show where today's best songwriters come to talk shop. I'm your host, Joe Pug. Each episode here, we host a distinguished guest and we ask them to go deep on their inspiration, on their process, on the general ups and downs of making a life in music. So, whether you're a grizzled veteran hitting the elliptical to lose those 25 pounds for your reunion tour, or else a scrappy upstart, putting a hard-boiled egg in your ramen and pretending it's what you actually wanted to eat anyway, this is your show. Because ultimately, it is what every writer seeks most, an ironclad excuse to put off actually writing. Hey guys, it's the last Friday of May 2018. I thank you for joining us. I had a great time on the road last month, everywhere I played in Texas, my first time back in Texas in about a year, and then pretty deep inside Wisconsin, made it all the way to Spring Green, Wisconsin, deeper in Wisconsin than I ever planned on getting. It was such small town Wisconsin that we went out to a bar after the show, and we were kind of being trailed by a cop. And I was like, man, I hope the driver of this car is sober. And but the cop wasn't following us to pull us over. He was also going to the bar, and he just came into the bar and hung out. So that's how it goes in deep rural Wisconsin, you guys. I had a great time there. I'm going to be playing some shows in the coming months as well, and here's where I'll be. If I'm coming near your neighborhood, come out and say hello. Next Friday, June 1st, I'll be in Columbia, Maryland, at a brand new venue called The Soundry. I'll be playing their opening night there, which is an honor. Thank you, Hamilton, who runs that place, and The Soundry. There's still a few tickets left for that show, but I would grab them sooner rather than later because it's a smaller venue. Then in July, I'll be out on the road supporting Mandolin Orange. My good old friends Mandolin Orange will be be pretty far west. July 2nd in Bozeman, Montana. And man, when we're in Bozeman, we will be getting some tacos from La Tinga, the best tacos in America. We'll go see Kurt and Alba over there, and we will get that sorted out. I will give the Mandolin Orangers the precious knowledge of the spicy chicken taco at La Tinga. Then July 3rd will be in Jackson, Wyoming, the 4th in Butte, Montana, and the 5th in Big Sky. And I've been trying like crazy to book a run of shows through the Southeast, and I think that's going to happen over the summer as well. So if you live in Georgia, Florida, Carolina, Virginia, keep your eyes out on the schedule. I should be announcing some stuff on that soon. If you're a listener of this show, but you've never heard any of my songs before, we should rectify that. That's my main deal. So a good place to do that is over at Spotify. Just search the words Intro to Joe Pug, and a playlist will come up with about 10 songs distilled from my various different albums I've put out over the years. They'll give you a pretty good idea of what I'm all about musically. Finally, if you enjoy this podcast, if you'd like to help it remain a viable endeavor for me, here's a couple things that you could do to help. You could rate the show in iTunes. You could spread the word about the show by telling a friend who you think might dig it. And the other way that you can now help out is by becoming a supporter of the show over at Patreon. What is Patreon? It is a platform that allows you to directly support a creative endeavor that you find meaningful. You just head over to their site, Patreon. You search for The Working Songwriter, or you search for my name, and then you choose to kick in a few bucks every month for the show. Think of it as basically a voluntary subscription, a subscription that you don't have to pay, but you just do so because you dig the show and you'd like to support it. Plus, over there at Patreon, that's the only place where you can score a sweet Working Songwriter t-shirt. It's a really cool design by Pearl Rachinsky, who is a very inventive visual artist, who happens to also be married to a songwriter of note, John Moreland. You can check out her stuff over on Instagram at Pearl Jr. She did a really cool job with the shirt design, and I think you'll dig it. So just head over there to Patreon, support the show, and grab one of our tees. Okay, that's all the harassment I have for you this month. I thought that I'd have more. I should have more, but I don't. This episode was a blast to record. Thanks to Dave for making the time, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Raised up north in Mankato, Minnesota, Dave Simonett is a songwriter and founding member of Trampled by Turtles, a pioneering bluegrass band from the Gopher State. The band was founded in 2003 while he was attending the University of Minnesota in Duluth, and it was formed after the untimely theft of some of his musical equipment. Left only with an acoustic guitar, he formed a new band with a style that would befit his only remaining instrument. The band would go on to establish a regional following for their energetic live shows, and then they burst onto the national and international stage. Dave is also the principal songwriter for Dead Man Winter, a group he formed in 2011. Trampled by Turtles has released 8 full albums, 3 of which have reached the U.S. Billboard 200, which is a rare feat for a bluegrass record. Their 5th release, Palomino, maintained a position in the top 10 on the bluegrass charts for 52 straight weeks. They've performed at any number of marquee national festivals, including Coachella, Bonnaroo, Stagecoach, Hardly Strictly Bluegrass, Bumbershoot, and Pickathon. Trampled appeared on Late Night with David Letterman a handful of times, and Dead Man Winter made their national television debut with Conan O'Brien. NPR has noted that Dave writes beautiful, heartfelt folk pop songs. The Star Tribune said his last Dead Man Winter record hurt like a wrecking ball, and the Associated Press declared about that same album, you'd have to go back decades to find a more cathartic breakup album, perhaps as far back as Dylan's Blood on the Tracks. That's high praise for anyone, much less a Minnesota boy. Dave and the Turtles were in D.C. last month to play a pair of sold-out shows at the 930 Club. I met him on the afternoon between shows at his hotel, and we talked about his musical journey so far. He's going to college too.
I didn't study anything in college, man. I moved to Duluth, and Duluth, Minnesota is northern Minnesota, right on Lake Superior. Have you ever played there?
I've never played there.
It's a beautiful place.
I should get up there.
It's I started going up there when I was a kid. What my dad and I did share a lot of is the outdoors. So we would go up and camp and hike. There's the Superior hiking trail that's like a almost 300 mile trail now that goes up the whole shore of Lake Superior, the North Shore.
300 miles?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's beautiful, from Canada down to Duluth. And it became a really special place for me. And I didn't know, I was 18, about to get out of high school, and I just started playing guitar. I knew I wanted to play music. That much I already knew, but I didn't know what that meant in practical terms.
So you knew already at that time, like, oh, yeah, this is it.
Before I started, I always wanted. It's the only, I wanted to be a baseball player when I was a real little kid, and then I wanted to be a musician shortly after. And so I knew that, but I didn't know if it was going to be, my career or anything. But I did know that I wanted to leave the town in which I grew up, and I had such a connection with Lake Superior, and I think maybe people can understand that in big. For me, it's big bodies of water like that. But I know people that grew up by the ocean, and they can't live away from the ocean, and desert does the same thing to people. And for me, it's the lakes in northern Minnesota was always just kind of my maybe spiritual home or something about it. And so I applied to college in Duluth, and I made it. I moved up there, and I made it almost a whole year at school before.
Almost a whole year. Yeah. Gave it the old college try.
Yeah, so to speak, But I found, I found some people to play music with there, and it was this whole new world. Playing guitar in your bedroom is one thing, man. But when you find but when you find a group of people to to share that with and to play with, it changed my life.
Man, that's really cool. I actually don't know that too well. I mean, I've had bands and longtime bands in the past, but I've always been more of like the singer-songwriter guy,
Sure.
solo on stage. So, yeah, I can't say that I've ever completely found that before.
Well,
And
I've that part of me kind of developed later. I've been finding more of that stuff now.
Yeah. At
that time, it was bands. Everything was, and that's how Trampled started too. But I had a couple buddies that I played with in high school, and then when I got to Duluth and we put I was in a few bands. We started bands and we'd go out and play gigs, and it was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
I felt liberated.
Oh man, yeah, I played a lot in high school. In high school I had a cover band called Guys and Ties.
Guys and Ties. Yeah, what was the repertoire?
The repertoire was everything. Oh, we got some Sublime in there.
Uh-huh.
We got some. But we play like Wilson Pickett songs too. But basically, we got hired to be like party band for different things.
Sure.
And so I had an original music band at that age. You couldn't make any money with, but this cover band, man, like we get hired and someone would pay us like $500.
Oh, I know.
And it was amazing.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it, man.
I think I'd like to be in a cover band now. That sounds like a blast.
Dude, there's an American Legion right near my house now, and I've thought to myself so much, like, I wonder if I can get some dudes in the D.C. area to just back me up, and we'll just play country standards there every Friday night.
There's a great a group of guys in Minneapolis that started a great Tom Petty cover band, All Tomorrow's Petty. And these are all touring musicians, with other projects, and some of them have many projects, and recording. They're studio guys too, but every couple months they get together and do a Tom Petty show, and it's great. It's just for kicks, I think it's important to keep something around that's just purely for fun.
Yes.
Whatever it is, but music is supposed to be fun, and it's easy to get worn down by the work part of it, I think.
Man, I think so too, and how that kind of manifests itself with me is sometimes I'll be on the road and I'll see a band playing and I'll just kind of like zero in on the bass player, and I'm like, God bless him, but that bass player hasn't booked any shows.
I know.
He had just, he's just there to play bass. He puts his P bass in the case after the set, and then he goes to the bar and talks to girls, and it looks awesome.
Yeah, there's that, and I've also caught myself, and I guess it's hard for me to say objectively because I'm me, but I don't view myself as a very critical music watcher. Like, I like most bands, and I love it. I mean, especially when I'm seeing them live. Even if maybe the songs don't connect with me or the music's not my thing, but just seeing a band get up and do it, because I know what it takes to do that, and but I know that I'm getting kind of jaded once in a while when I'll go and kind of pick apart a band's show.
Yeah.
And that's not why I'm there. I'm there to see what they're doing, and if then I know I need to refresh my thinking a little bit.
Yeah, it's like, dude, this is seriously not the point right now.
Yeah. Stop being a jerk.
I like what you said though about like liking most bands. Like that's where I find myself a lot. Like if I'm off on a night in a city and I go to see live music and I sit down, like 9 times out of 10 I'm really happy I'm there, and I'm happy about the commitment from the people on stage, man.
Me too, man. And it's all of us that do this, we really need to take it easy on each other, I think, because we all know all of us are doing the same damn thing.
Yeah.
We're all writing the songs and then playing the songs that we wrote, and unsure in the same amount of, we're unsure about ourselves, and we get up there and it's risky to play live. Yeah. And it's also a blast, and it's such a weird emotional roller coaster, and every band you see is going through that same thing. And so if I really don't like a band, which is, I don't remember the last time I've seen one that really did this to me, but then just go home.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever. It's not your thing.
Definitely. I can't remember the last time I just saw a band and I was like, I fucking hate this band. Like, I think it'd really take a lot.
Yeah, me too. Me too, man. It's all good. I don't know. I have to tell myself to lighten up a lot, but it's music is fun, It's a lot of things. It's serious too, but live bands, that's a unique thing, and we're lucky to be able to see them kind of whenever we want.
It is, and like you said, I guess the idea of being easy on one another It's like none of us know what's going on when an album or something comes out and it doesn't go the way that a band wants it to go. They don't know what went wrong.
Yeah.
But just as often, when things go exactly right, no one knows why it went exactly right. It just did, man.
There's a whole business of people trying to figure that out.
And they just don't.
Constantly.
They don't know. Things are happening on so many different dimensions and so many different planes. I just don't know who thinks that they can figure it out.
Yeah, I know. I feel like a lot of people think they know, maybe, but nobody knows why. You know, that's the great mystery in music and the music business, but I also think in songs too, is the connection factor, like why some things connect with a huge audience and why some things that maybe sound so similar, or even, you know, or they just don't. And timing, I mean, who knows? There's a huge list of factors probably. I mean, I feel like there's a certain amount of control you can have over that kind of thing. You can do the best you can in setting up, say, a record, for example. Mm-hmm. If you've done, you know, if you've told people about your record, you've got, you know, the right business team behind you or the right distribution, all that logistical crap. If you get all that, and that's all you can do, and the rest of it, who knows? It works or it doesn't work. Try again. I will say though, when you say releasing the record, that made me think about records that maybe are universally considered shitty. You know what I mean?
Like which one?
Because we just put a record out, and every time I put a record out, by the time it gets out, that means I like it. Because I wouldn't put it out. I don't know anybody who just put a record out just because they need to put a record out. So I think like Saved by Dylan or something like that.
Right.
I mean, kind of universally panned. But you know that when he put that, I mean, he was proud of that record when he put it out.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how that, you know, it would be hard to put out an album and have like the whole universe think it's horrible. You know what I mean?
It would.
But you also can't spend too much time thinking about that.
Even if you put out an album where you were totally taking a piss for your audience, like it would become like a meta sort of art that people dug.
Right. You know? Someday. You know, I think Neil Young's Trans is kind of like that now. Like,
well, yeah.
You look at it in the somebody like that's career, and that's an example of how they were kind of fearless, where at the time it was like, what the hell is going on?
Was Trans the record of his, maybe this is an apocryphal story, but was Trans the record where basically he owed his record label one more record and he put out what he thought was a shit record despite the record label?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've never talked to the guy, but when reading kind of the famous biography of him, Shaky, which I did, no, he was into that, at least that record. Maybe there was another one in there that's more like that, but he wanted to try, you know, he used a vocoder.
Yeah.
And it was him trying to relate, this is paraphrasing, but him trying to relate to his son, who I think was cerebral palsy. I don't remember. Forgive me if I'm getting that wrong. But in some way needed to communicate using a similar device. That's how he communicated. So he was trying, in his mind, he was trying to sing his songs and trying to envision what it would be like for his son to have to do that.
Yeah.
And also, I don't think anybody had ever made a record like that before. So, you know, like it or not, it's kind of it's a unique thing. And I mean, he got sued he was going to get sued, for not being Neil Young.
Right.
So, I mean, that's pretty badass, too, I think.
Yeah, didn't Geffen sue him? And their basic legal maneuver was, when we signed you to this deal, we had reasonable expectations of what a Neil Young record sounds like.
Yeah.
And his point back
that's a good
like,
precedent for that.
Yes.
You know, to be like, an artist has a right to change and do it. You know, the whole point, you know, nobody wants to make the same, well, maybe not nobody. I don't want to make the same record 100 times. And no, you shouldn't be expected to. You know, when you start, from when I was 19 in Duluth or whatever to I'm 38 now, it's barely even the same guy in there, you know, so maybe you're not the same person you were when you signed that record deal or whatever,
right.
You know. But that it's important. I think the only way to make it a long time, maybe not the only way, I shouldn't say it like that, but a way to keep yourself interested in your career for a long time is to recognize that you have the freedom to do whatever you want. And you should. And you know, fuck the critics, man. It's just like, you can't sit there and try to produce things to make people happy, you know.
You can't, and luckily we're at a point in time where that kind of critical stuff matters less than ever, because people aren't deciding whether they're going to go to the store and spend $20 on a CD. Like,
I know, right?
They're like, fuck what this person wrote about this. I can just click a button on my phone and listen to it. And
I can listen to it and check it out myself.
Right now. Yeah.
They, I have kind of I don't know how to put that, a combative relationship with the music critic business. Mm-hmm. If we get into that, like, that's the kind of the same thing as what I was talking about before. Somebody, it's, there are some beautiful music writers, and I read a lot of them. Yeah. And it's cool to read somebody's perspective on somebody else's work. I think to kind of take it apart in their own head, but they're really just guessing. And in my opinion, nobody really has the right to say somebody else's work is worth something or worthless, or that's always been kind of mystifying to me, that's a job. My job is to somebody made this work, and as far as records go, I know what goes into doing that. So I know it's not an easy thing to pull off, and they do go through all of this hell, and sometimes it's great, sometimes it's a real struggle to write the music, record the music. It's this kind of this fragile thing, and you let it out into the world, and there's this whole group of people whose jobs are to rip that shit apart. And just like, it's I don't see any joy there.
No, I think where music writing is at its best is when you have someone who's a true music lover who is able to take an artist's work and put it into historical context, basically, in musical context for the reader to be able to say, oh, okay, well, they're coming out of this tradition here, and here's where they're breaking with that tradition, and here's where they're sharpening it and making it anew. That can be really helpful.
Yeah,
for music writers.
I mean, otherwise it's just opinions, Like that person has no more legitimate claim to knowing whether something is good or not, and that's a really basic, and I think, I think a detrimental way to look at music is to separate it into good and bad. That's too simple.
Well, Duke Ellington did, man. Yeah. So there's kind of a 5-year. It seems like there's like a 4 or 5 year period between when Trampled got started and when you guys really started hitting it and heading out on the road. Or correct me if I'm wrong here, but you guys started in like 2003, 2004-ish?
Yeah, 2003.
Okay, and and then you would put out about 2 or 3 records before you started hitting the road, or were you hitting the road pretty
we
early?
were hitting the road, but it was, we kind of started, I think, maybe doing concentric circles around Duluth. We'd get it, we spent a little time in Wisconsin or something, and we started to play in Minneapolis, and, eventually we got all the way to Fargo, and just started getting wider and wider. Early on, I don't remember what year this was, but I want to say maybe 2005. It was pretty early. We did a self-booked, self-everything tour to Colorado. It was the first time we'd ever left the Midwest, and we did it for 5 or 6 days. And then we were hooked after that, and it was everything that you think a first tour like that would be, sleeping in vans and on floors and eating out of gas stations and playing for 6 people and horrible sound. Mm-hmm. And it was the best time of my life.
Hell yeah, man.
So good. And so it was such an adventure. Yeah. And we were, there's timing comes into this again, because when you do that kind of thing, I think when you're 22, 23, it can be pure adventure. When you're, if later on, or depending on when this happens to you, if you have responsibilities to deal with, it can be stressful.
Right.
But we didn't have any money anyway. All of us we were living super inexpensively. We pretty much just, needed to make enough to get gas in the tank. Yeah. And so it was very eye-opening, and I've learned a lot. And then right away we wanted to start doing that more.
Yeah. Have you ever read Moby Dick before?
Yeah, but high school. Probably.
Okay, like
been a while.
It'd be worth to revisit. I tried many many times to read Moby Dick, and it just didn't work. And then finally, the vernacular kind of clicked in my head, and I was able to read it. And this
Okay.
was just a couple of years ago. And what really struck me was talking about this whaling crew going out with Ahab and Starbuck. This whaling crew and the esprit de corps that happened, and the sort of adventurousness of it. What it really reminded me of, it made me really nostalgic for being in my early 20s in a van, taking America by storm.
Yeah, man.
In my mind, taking it by storm.
Yeah.
You know, there was, like you said, all of 6 people at the shows, but in my mind, it was like, God, in your early 20s, it's kind of like when you're the most, hopefully, you're the most narcissistic that you'll ever be, you know, in your life. And it kind of plays into like all that kind of crazy Messiah complex stuff that can happen at that age. It's so fun.
It's so unknown, you know, like with anything else. You and I have both been doing this for a long time now, and that you can't keep that sense of any of it really. But, you know, it's the 40th time I've been to this town. It's not the same as that first
actually,
thing.
you'd be like psychologically unwell if you had that same feeling.
I would.
every time.
It'd be amazing.
Yeah.
We should feel that way, but you know, I do consciously, and I have to consciously do it now because that it's not a brand new thing anymore. But I do very much appreciate it still, and it's still a blast.
Yes.
And I don't want to sound like, oh, it was really fun when I was that age and now it's just the grind or whatever. You know, you can find adventure. I mean, I'm traveling around the world playing music. Like, it's my fault if I'm bored, all right? So it's great still. But that first, you know, man, that first couple times, like, that was my first time driving into the mountains. And, you know, I remember the first time I got to California and saw California, it was like,
Yeah.
this is unbelievable, and it's so cool. So I mean, that's, you know, I think when I got out and I was doomed after that. It ruined my life. You know?
And were your folks back home thinking like, man, he made it about through 1 year of school, and now he's driving out to Colorado in an Econoline? Were they freaked out?
Yeah, I don't know. I know I actually had, bless their hearts, man. I had a lot of support. In that, I think they were worried when I decided I wasn't going to go to college. But, you know, I don't come from like an Ivy League family or anything, and it's not a requirement to maintain an inheritance or some shit for me to go to college. They just wanted me to do something I wanted to do, and so very lucky in that fact that I mean, they were my biggest fans right away. That's
great. That's been my same experience too. My parents have always been super supportive. I have friends where that's not the case.
Sure, me too.
Man, it makes it about 10 times as hard, I gotta say.
Yeah, you know, it would be really hard, I think, to not have that kind of core, and, you know, or to have to feel like you needed to prove some kind of success before it was accepted or any of that. I'm glad I never had to deal with that. I mean, as a parent now, you know, I think it would be so cool to see my kids kind of do something unexpected, maybe like that, or at least at the very least to see them be passionate enough about something that they're willing to kind of alter the rest of their life to kind of go around it. I that's one of the things I'm so thankful for, is that I have that in my work. I don't have, I think what a lot of people get stuck with is work. I mean, I don't think about retirement. I don't, you know, it's not a means to an end for me. It just kind of is my life.
It is the end.
It is the end. And to have that is a really, I never take that for granted. That's a really great thing to have. So I hope my kids get something like that.
Man, I don't know if I saw it in the Petty documentary or I read it in his biography, but there's like the double whammy of not only was his dad not interested in his musical career at the very beginning, but when Petty became famous,
super interested then.
Started taking all the credit for being Tom Petty's dad and shit like that. And Petty seemed like super bitter about it, man. Yeah, I would be too.
Yeah, you know? I don't think I think we're talking about the Running Down a Dream documentary. Yeah, God, that's a great movie.
Yeah, I watched that about 6 times.
Yeah, me too. Which is about a full day.
I know
it's so long.
Yeah, it's like 6 hours.
Yeah, I remember seeing that part, and I don't blame him. You know, I don't think he had a terribly good relationship with the guy anyway, to begin with, and it's Yeah, I mean, the people, I think anytime you get a little success, he got a fuckload of success,
Yeah.
And so I can't imagine that life. But even a little bit will bring people out of the woodwork a little. And you're like, oh, now this is cool, right? Oh, this is, now what I'm doing is all right. Now it's not just a hobby, I guess, to you.
Have you had that happen to you before?
Yeah, I think, yes. I mean, I could definitely say yes. But it's just, it's okay. I mean, whatever. It's never. It hasn't happened to me with anybody very close to me anyway. That would be kind of a heartbreaker, probably.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, people come and go as they please. So I'll say that.
At what point? So you have that early on. You guys are booking your own tours out to all the way out to Colorado. Let me ask you. This is sort of an aside, but did you ever play a place in Grand Rapids, South Dakota called Nutty's North?
Oh yeah.
Fuck, man.
In Sioux Falls.
Sioux Falls.
Yeah.
Yes.
Several times.
I played there a lot.
That basement, right?
In the basement.
Smoking inside.
Smoking. Yep.
Those days. Yeah, because, I have family in Sioux Falls, so we ended up playing there quite a bit.
Oh, really?
My sister lives there. I have an aunt and uncle that lived there for a long time. And that when we were booking ourselves, that was kind of, we would find places like that because we'd have a place to stay.
Yeah.
We could all stay at my aunt and uncle's house. So let's find a place in Sioux Falls, and it's, on the way west, which is the way we would like to go a lot in the early days. But yeah, man, Nutty's North.
Shout out to Nutty's North.
You bet.
A lot of pills.
I hope you're still
over
kicking.
At Nutty's North. Great time. Dave and the Turtles have come a long way since playing Nutty's North in Sioux Falls, which from a quick Google search appears to be permanently closed. They've long since graduated to better rooms, but still, not all clubs are created equal. I'd say the title for the best club in America is a toss-up between First Avenue in Minneapolis and the 930 Club in D.C. Both rooms are in the heart of a great city. They have permanent staffs that have held their jobs for decades. The sound is pristine. The hospitality is flawless, both for the bands and the crowds. When I spoke to Dave this month, he was playing a few shows there. The club originally opened in 1980 at 930 F Street Northwest and quickly became a home base for DC's burgeoning hardcore scene. At the time, it was tough for those bands to find a venue that would book them. Their crowds tended to be aggressive, and they also spent very little at the bar. That time in the wilderness is immortalized in the Bad Brains song, Band in D.C. The 930 Club accommodated their audience, though, even going so far as promoting afternoon matinee punk concerts for their underage contingent. Concerts by Teen Idols, Minor Threat, Black Flag, and a host of others gave the venue its artist-friendly reputation. The 930 also provided a venue for DC's native musical dialect, go-go, hosting shows by Trouble Funk, Backyard Band, Rare Essence. Chuck Brown, the godfather of go-go, still has a posthumous birthday celebration there every year. Eventually, as the bands the 930 promoted outgrew their small F Street location, the 930 had to grow as well or lose them to other venues in town. New owner Seth Hurwitz spearheaded that move. "You're supposed to win by building a better mousetrap," he once said. "You win by doing a better job, building a better product, so we set out to make the club that would hopefully end all of the arguments. We were the first to go after the ultimate club concept, and we did it, and the rest is history." They relocated to the former WUST Music Hall, which had originally been a club owned by Duke Ellington himself. They would go on to host what is basically a cross-section of American musical history, from James Brown to Nirvana, from the Ramones to Ani DeFranco, from the Beastie Boys to Bob Dylan. Growing up in Maryland, right outside D.C. and playing music as a kid, I dreamed about the 930 the same way a kid playing basketball dreams about playing the Garden. And when I finally got there, it gave me the feeling that I search for most in life. And that's the feeling of standing in a long line that was here before you came and will be here after you go. Being a link in a chain. Having a cameo in a huge, messy story that you've always loved. And it was worth playing all the nuttiest norths in the world to get there to the 930.
Yeah.
Can you remember a turning point with the band where you were like, oh, this could work. This could definitely work. This could be a thing where we could all do this and have relatively normal lives playing music.
I think we decided to do that before we hit that point.
Really?
And I don't remember, I honestly can't think of a specific time where it was like, oh, this is working now. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't that clear. I think it maybe started to work because we quit our jobs. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a double-edged sword. I know a lot of people touring have this dilemma. Is there's a certain point where I think to kind of increase your income, if you want to put it that simply, or at least further your career, or even just do it more, at a certain point you have to kind of quit everything else and go for it.
Yes.
But that rarely comes at a time when you're making enough money doing it to do that. So, you just kind of jump off the edge and struggle. And if you can make that work, then that's what we did.
You just got to have low expense. You got to have low overhead at the start.
I don't know if I could give a better piece of advice to a person starting out. It's like, keep your life simple and cheap, and then you can do this because you can make a living if if you don't need that much to start. Great.
I think that's the whole deal. My dad was a contractor for 25 some odd years, and I remember when I was first starting out, every time I talked to him on the phone, he'd end every phone call with, keep it skinny, Joe. Keep it skinny. You don't need this. You don't need a tour manager. You don't need, keep it skinny. Keep it skinny. And he was right, man. It allowed me to stay in the game. There is that fragile moment where you've kind of quit your job and you've taken this on and you're doing it for a living. If you have high expenses at that time, there is a fragile moment where those expenses might break you and make you have to go back to what you were doing before.
Yeah, and then that might be it.
And then that might be it, because you said, well, I tried that and it didn't work.
Yeah, you have to, I think that, that at that point, so this is the way that, we came up doing it. I know that a lot of people have other experiences in music. Some people start with a hit, and so I have no idea what that's like. But in this way, it is kind of a survival thing. And if one is passionate enough about doing it, then the rest of that stuff doesn't really matter. You can sleep on floors and eat rice, but you're doing it for a purpose. And it's, if you're following that vision, that kind of stuff now, I remember it kind of fondly, like a simpler time maybe.
Yeah.
If you need a lot, then you're probably in the wrong line of work anyway.
Yeah,
I think.
Get into real estate, man.
If you're starting a band to make money, you're kind of an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's funny that, if that was imposed upon you, you're going to have to ride in a van every day and sleep on the floor and eat rice. If that was imposed upon you, if you were forced to make that choice, you'd feel really put upon. But it says a lot about human motivation and inspiration that if you're doing it for a higher purpose, man, you don't even think about it. You don't think twice about it.
It's the same. The stuff people sacrifice for, it's not, I won't say it's the same as having kids, because nothing is like that. But it's a similar philosophy in when you might be going through this now, Joe, when you sacrifice sleep and comfort and all these things, but you know why you're doing it. And it doesn't make it easy all the time, or even most of the time, but it's suffering with a purpose is a whole nother ballgame. Mm-hmm. If you get up and go to work and hate your job and there's no reason for you to do that, that's misery. If you have a heart, but if you get up, and for me it was music, if I knew that anything I was sacrificing was going towards this thing, then it didn't feel that much of a sacrifice.
I'd agree. Man, one thing I've always wanted to know, because as I was saying earlier, it's always, for me, it's been like this little small thing that I do. I get up and I decide the next 3 months are going to look like this.
Sure.
Here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to write it. And you've been with a group this whole time, which seems like so much harder to manage. It's just like a whole different dimension. Having been with this crew in some version or another for close to 15 years now, like, what is the secret to keeping harmony with the band that can kind of keep it going over years?
Well, I think respect is a big part of it. I think, respect between the people doing this together, between the band and now between the band and crew and everybody we've worked with for a long time. That's huge. I think everybody... That's a really good question.
What's an example? An example of respect?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do. I mean, most of it is what happens off the stage. Like you're saying, you get up and you're planning this out. Well, now you have 6 people that have an equal say in what's happening, and so it. Trying to do things as a group, trying to keep, make sure that everybody's ego stays. And we don't, thankfully, I'm blessed with a group of people that's never really been a problem. Mm-hmm. Everybody feels like they play a part, and I don't feel like anybody thinks anybody else's part is lesser or more than theirs. So I think that has been a real key for us, is that it really has been kind of a family thing. And it's been the same guys, we've added people, but nobody's left. Mm-hmm. And there's different, I think there's probably different areas of answers to that question. There's a musical one, where, everybody wants, everybody's kind of got to stay into it musically. And so I like making sure everybody has a voice in that area is huge. Mm-hmm. And but I think what's kept us together, and probably what breaks up a lot of bands, is all of the other parts of music, is the traveling, the business side. When that becomes a real thing, that can really hurt bands. But I think, space, making sure that you remember that for us, that we fucking love each other, and I really do, even after all this time, still enjoy being around all those guys. And for us, maybe that's our secret, is that we're buddies,
Yeah, well, maybe that's the answer.
It helps.
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah, personalities are tough, and when you're touring, like when you've toured with a band, you're in really close quarters.
Yes.
And that makes people go crazy sometimes.
It does.
And it burns people out, and people get sick of it, and they got to go home. And so I think, making sure everybody's got enough space, as much as you can find, mm-hmm. that helps a lot. Making sure that nobody's acting superior to anybody else, that helps a lot.
Yeah.
And so respect, like, in that way.
The space thing can be huge. It took like 3 or 4 years for me to realize. I toured the longest with this bass player, good friend of mine, Matt, who mixes this podcast actually, and it took about 3 or 4 years for me to realize Matt and I would always split the room together. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that drove him crazy about me is every morning I'd wake up a little bit before him and I'd go like, and I'd crack my fingers first thing in the morning. And I guess that just made him, for like 3 or 4 years, just want to like reach over and choke me to death in bed. Until finally one day he just told me. I was like, yeah, I guess.
I think you came upon another great point of advice too, is openness and honesty about those things.
Yes.
Because those things buried get a lot bigger. It's a knuckle crack,
Yes.
Easily fixed.
Yes.
But I have those, and I've had those told to me, like things that I do.
Yes.
But if you don't, it's hard, because you're on the road together, you're out there, all you have is kind of each other sometimes. Yep. And it's really easy to say, I don't want to rock the boat. Let's just get through this.
Yes.
But man, that little seed grows inside your brain. What seems like such a stupid little thing, and some annoyance about somebody can get, it can break. Bands have broken up for less than that.
No, they really have. And I had a guy, the second longest guy I played with, this guy, Greg, great guitar player. And when he first joined, he was really direct about everything. And I was very passive aggressive about everything. And at first I didn't like that about Greg. And then I realized, oh my God, this is like the main thing that I have to learn from this guy.
It's not easy, man.
He would speak up when something in his mind wasn't kosher. He would speak up. It'd be uncomfortable for a second, but it would get addressed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
yeah, there's a balance.
Huge.
I think you have to relate it to the people you're with. Some
Yeah.
people can take more directness than others.
Mhm.
Some people, it tips the scale the other way if you do it too much, you know?
Yeah.
So you really just have to, it's just, I think just being conscious of the personalities and where with which you found yourself. And treating them as such, you know. I have my strengths and weaknesses, and so did everybody else in our band. And you know, maybe we deal with I would deal with a problem should something come up, maybe differently with one guy than with another guy.
Yeah.
But because of my respect for them, and because I know that you know, everybody is an individual here, but at a baseline, keeping everything open as much as possible. If something's bugging you, please tell me. I want to know. I don't want this to be something that the rest of the guys are talking about in the green room when I'm not there. I mean, that kind of, I mean, that's childish shit.
Yeah, it's childish, and that's kind of, you know, that's part of what I felt when Matt told me that. It was like, dude, I can easily stop cracking my fingers in the morning. Like, I'll start today.
On purpose.
I want to talk a little bit about your writing process and how it's evolved. What has changed the most in how you write a song from 15 years ago to this last album?
What has changed the most? I would say I probably have to try harder now. And I say that because when I started writing songs, I was just starting. So I hadn't done anything yet. And I wasn't, you know, nowadays I work at the craft of writing consciously and every day. Mm-hmm. And so I put a lot more work into it. But I think that has to do a lot with, I've written a lot of songs now, and I don't want to write the same song again. So, you know, when the first things that just come out, it's all brand new. And nowadays when things come out, I've kind of consciously craft them a little bit more. Sometimes in order for them not to sound like, or at least in my mind, to sound just like something that I've already done. Or, you know, you fall into traps of word usage a lot. I mean, there's like basic grammar stuff that I work on harder now.
Yeah.
But I definitely put more work into it now than I did.
So you are sitting down every day with the page when you're off the road?
And it's not songs. You know, most of the time it's not songs. But I try to write. I've found, at least for me, that I write more and I write what I consider better if I write more. So the more, you know, just kind of keeping those wheels greased, and it's almost in the study of language, just trying to keep my mind thinking in that way. And I find that if I go for months without sitting down and writing, which I've done many times, it's really hard for me to start again.
Yeah, it does take, if you've gone away from it and come back, it's like, okay, well, you're going to have many sessions where you just sit down and the stuff you're putting out it's not even that it's just unusable, it's just unoriginal. It's like you're gearing your mind back up again.
It is like that.
You know?
Yeah. You kind of have to get through a couple layers, I think.
Yes.
You know, there's the stuff that sometimes easy stuff. I mean, I've also sat down and written a song in 5 minutes that I loved, you know, and so that happens once in a while. But a lot of times I have to kind of get my mind past this like ultra simple stuff first.
I'm trying to get to the simple stuff. I'm in like an album process right now where I'm working with this guy Kenneth from the Milk Carton Kids.
Oh, yeah,
and
cool.
The main reason I wanted to work with him is because he's a songwriter. And so for the producing role, I'm like, man, let's just talk about material. That's all I want to talk about. And we've been doing this process for 15 months together now. And it's just been in like the last 2 months where about 2 months ago, I ran out of stuff of like, oh, I had this idea like 3 or 4 years ago. Let's put this in here. I got none of that left. There's no bone pile left.
The well is dry.
Yeah, the well is dry. But in these last 2 months, I finally kind of pushed past all these old ideas that I had to let go of. And now there's kind of some exciting stuff coming out. But it's taken 15 months of constant writing to get to the new stuff that needs to be heard.
I had... a phone for a while, an iPhone, right? And I had, maybe you do this too, with a voice memo thing.
Yeah.
Where I will sit and I'll driving or whatever, walking in on the street, a line will come in. And, I wish I could tell when this was happening, but something inspires you and you get like, I like that, and I'll sit and I'll record it on there. At home, if I'm sitting around playing guitar, I find a melody I like, I'll record 30 seconds of it, just so I remember.
Yeah.
I was at a concert in Minneapolis, the Pines, one of my favorite bands.
They're
at the
great.
Cedar Cultural Center. I remember this like, so well. I'm sitting in the audience, and in between the sets, there was another band, and then they were about to play. I had a fucking brilliant song idea, and I go and I pull out my voice recorder, and I look at it, and I hit record, and it says 001. Like, well, that's weird. I know I have like 150 things on here.
Yeah.
Everything was gone. The thing, like, the app, like, deleted and reinstalled itself overnight or something like that. And I was planning on making a record. Like, these are ideas these were active ideas,
Yeah.
And so I went through about 30 minutes of just being fucking pissed and distraught, kind of. But then the feeling that I landed upon at the end was this huge sense of liberation, because I was really struggling finishing anything.
Yeah.
And I had 100 quarter songs or lines and melodies and all this. I think it ended up turning into like noise. And
yes.
I all of a sudden had a fresh start, and I wrote a record pretty quickly after that. And I think just kind of getting rid of all of the stuff that I had built up helped.
There's some people that really believe in, and I'm starting to believe in this a lot more myself, of if a line or a melody comes to you like that, if you have the opportunity to just sit down and finish it in the moment, that's the way to do it. Now, of course, you can't always do that.
Right.
I mean, you have so many responsibilities.
Yeah. Sometimes you're at dinner.
Yeah, sometimes you're at dinner. But I think that's why when you lose all the work like that, writing sessions for me are just different if I'm going to my voice memo off the phone, going through the last 10 and being like, okay, I'll do that idea this afternoon. It feels a little bit like homework.
Yeah.
Whereas if I have a day in my studio and as I'm dropping my kid off with the babysitter, I had an idea that morning and I'm like, I'm
fresh.
Juiced, man.
Yeah.
I'm licking my chops to go downstairs.
That is the feeling. That's it, man.
That's it.
That's the golden goose.
And if I could have done that with the voice memo at the time while I was driving, I would have felt the same way. That's the inspiration. You mentioned earlier, you don't want to make the same album over and over and over again, so you look for ways to be fresh or stay inspired. And I think increasingly that's literally your whole job as a writer is ways to stay inspired throughout your life, like looking for the inspiration.
Yeah, I like that too. And it's a big job.
Yeah. It's a really big job.
There's a lot of pressure there. But it's self-imposed pressure, and that's part of it. Just in any art, I think that's what everybody's trying to figure out. If you want, it's one thing to make a record. It's a whole nother thing to make 12 records, or 15 or whatever. And I love the process, and it's given me these great, moments of really great joy, and it's some of the most frustrating times of my life too.
Yeah.
But it's never been boring.
What does it feel like at this point? Because you've been bouncing back and forth between, like when Trampled was on hiatus, you were working with your Dead Man Winter project. Mm-hmm. So when you come back for this Trampled tour, you must feel like you just have such a wealth of catalog to draw from every night, like song-wise.
Compared to the other, it is, which is nice, but that has been fun, and it's been fun for us to kind of dig back a little bit and play some stuff we haven't played for a long time. It is fun. I'm generally focused on, though, and maybe to a fault sometimes, but the next thing, and that we've just put a record out, and it's kind of all I want to play, and that's me.
Sure.
It doesn't necessarily make for a good show, probably, but I'm thankful I still have that, because it's really my biggest fear in music is being uninspired, and just kind of going through the motions. And I've been there before. Mm-hmm. And it feels none of it seems worth it at that point. I'd rather just be home hanging out with my kids.
Right.
And so keeping things fresh, it's and like any relationship, man, like if you can find a way to keep that spark going, space, I'll go back to that. That's been us taking a year and a half away from each other has been amazing.
I can only imagine.
And I feel maybe a lot of people would disagree with this, but I feel like our band right now is better than it's been in years, just because of that. And everybody's everybody's excited. Everybody played music with other people for a couple of years, which is a really great thing to do.
Yes. You learn so much working with other people and especially making records with other people.
Yeah.
Going into the studio and doing something. Like a couple of years ago, we never even ended up putting this out, but I did a record with your buddy Frankie Lee and Eric Koskinen and JT
friends.
Bates, and I learned so much in 5 days. Just the way that they set up the session and did stuff.
Sure.
You take so much away from that, man.
Yeah, it's easy to get comfortable, and it's comfortable. Only feels comfortable for a little bit of time, and then it feels boring, maybe.
It does. I remember we were recording one song, and it started out with JT just playing a drum beat, and then we all came in, so we were going to cut that tail off, and it was a really good take, and we were sitting in front of the board, kind of giving it a rough mix. And Frankie was like, watch this. And he cut off the drum beat. So it was just like the pickup of like, pop-boom. And then the song started.
Yeah.
And it was like, it blew my mind at the time. It was like the stupidest little trick. But, if you pick up 100 tricks like that, all of a sudden you're good at making records.
The start of Like a Rolling Stone.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Man.
Yeah. Yeah, it is great. That's healthy. And I think the longer you do it, the more I'm not preaching to people, but the more I think I should do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Is I love playing music with new people, and I think often about new projects I want to start, and once in a while I actually follow through on those things, and it's even if the thing is a nightmare, it's still that part of your brain, the creative part of your brain, is still exercising that.
Yeah.
And trying to find uncharted territory, whether or not that's really a thing or not. But in your brain, that search is that's akin. I mean, that's part of art. Yeah. Like that. We should all be looking for that. I'm not saying that we're going to make anything that doesn't sound like something else, but in your brain, in my brain, the search for trying to do something that I haven't done, that's what keeps you young, I think.
Trying to find that line between the known and the unknown, and being right as far up against that line of the unknown as you can kind of tolerate, basically, without going nuts. Because you can go too far and just but
it's a constant adventure, man. It's great. It's great. I just finished. I don't know how you work, man, but for me, songwriting, I work in cycles, and it feels like I've done it enough now where I can kind of identify this cycle where I'll go. Say we'll start it at the writing part where I'll be writing a ton and I get manic about it. I won't sleep and I won't eat and just write. And that's my favorite time, by the way. I love that shit. And then maybe I'll decide it's time to make a record and get the studio time set up and then I'll have a deadline for when I need to get these songs kind of glued together. Get those things made, hit the studio, make the record, which is a whole nother project.
Yes.
And then after a record is done, I won't write for months, every time. And it used to just drive me crazy because I don't want to stop writing. I love writing. But, I would get so frustrated and writer's blocky and just like hate everything. It's such a roller coaster, man. Yeah. Now I know it's coming, so I kind of try to envision that as a vacation. Yeah, a little bit, like let my mind do something else. And then, I usually get to the point where I feel like I'm never going to write another song again in my life, and then I start writing again.
Yeah, that kind of letdown period I'm pretty familiar with. I've kind of steered into when I know that's coming, I just start playing other people's songs a lot. Like when I'm hanging out, like I'll go down, I'll go in and I'll put the headphones on in the studio and I'll just get on the piano and listen to myself through the reverb, through everything, and I'll just play I'll play Dylan When He Returns 10 times, you know what I mean?
Fantastic.
And just get into it, man.
I feel like I I just start doing yard work.
It's probably helpful.
I do.
It's probably more useful to your family too.
That is, yeah, right. That is what I did that a lot this time around. Instead of struggling with writing, when we finished our record in December, I told myself, I was like, I'm out. I'm not touching a guitar for a while. I'm gonna go camping. I'm gonna go fishing and do all these other things I like to do, and give my brain some rest, which has felt good. And I've started to write again. And sometimes it's easy for me to forget to do other things that I like to do.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Well, dude, you got a show tonight, and that's our hour. But really appreciate you sitting down.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
That's our show for this month. Thanks for listening. Trampled by Turtles' latest album is Life is Good on the Open Road, available everywhere digital music is sold or streamed. Today's episode was engineered and mixed by Matt Schusler. Research and editorial direction provided by the intrepid and thorough Paul Barbagallo. If before we meet again, you sit down to write, please remember, an expensive drug habit is not a song, a compelling Instagram account is not a song, and most importantly, reverb is not a song. So let all that take care of itself, and for you, just keep your eye on the song.